The philosopher Susan Wolf once said that often the need for meaning is connected to the sense that one's life is empty or shallow. And it's true, not rarely is it the case that we want to know why we are here the most in times where we feel that something is amiss. You usually don't fall in love and at the same time ask yourself, why am I here? No, the thought that runs through your mind is probably something like, oh my God, I'm so glad to be alive. But in the times you feel like something is missing, then you're quite likely to ask yourself, what's the point of it all? It's interesting to note that when it comes to purpose, our emotions and our intellect start to tightly dance together. Something can indeed feel meaningful, but that's then strongly interwoven with our cognitive plausibility structures. We can also question and deny something its meaningfulness, and then it quite automatically feels pointless. Let's look at an example. A life of a person who just fell in love somehow just makes sense, and it's governed by a higher notion. It's thrilling, vibrant, and enticing. Naturally, of course, we all would like to be that person, and not just now, but all the time. But perhaps disappointingly, life is not this consistent. There are darker days in each of our paths where we question these things. Then the magical glow fades and our hopeful, shimmering ideals crumble. The universe becomes empty, blank, cold. It's not only that we rationally question its meaning, all of a sudden it also feels void and meaningless. And then the reverse happens. We don't want to be there, and we don't want to be that person anymore. It has been found that people who lack a sense of purpose in their lives often seem to be in a state of psychological distress. They are statistically more likely to suffer from a range of negative dispositions, such as depression, anxiety, boredom, and loneliness. People who believe themselves to be leading a purposeful life have been diagnosed with lower cholesterol levels. They are overall less obese and also have a healthier inflammatory system. As exaggerated as it may sound, some studies have even claimed that such people were observed to be less plagued by physical disabilities and suffered fewer cognitive impairments, like Alzheimer's. Wow, this sounds like having a purpose is fundamental for our species. So what then is purpose for us? How can we gain meaning? If you ask the biologist, the answer you might get is to spread your genes and secure the survival of your offspring and thereby your species. If you ask the rabbi, it might be to hold the Ten Commandments and all the other laws prescribed by the Torah. If you asked an economist, it could be to maximize your financial assets. If you consulted a socialist, it would probably be to give up the individual self for society as a whole. And if you asked Miss America, perhaps, the answer would be world peace. Haha. But what underlies most of these ideas is that eventually they are supposed to be recipes for happiness. Even the American Declaration of Independence wants to establish the ideas of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness as inalienable rights of all mankind. Ask your friends and family, or some random people on the streets. Chances are high that becoming happy counts amongst the top-rated answers for what should give us purpose. Robert Nozick, a famous 20th century philosopher, has set out to dismantle this idea by asking us to imagine a pleasure machine. It's a device we can get hooked up to, like in the movie Matrix, and when we are connected to the machine, then we feel nothing but pleasure. Nothing we experience and feel in the world this machine makes us to believe in is actually real, but it stimulates the sensation of pleasure and makes us happy. Now here's a question for you. Would you want to live your life in a simulation of this machine? Nozick believed that we would prefer the messiness of real life over a pure figment of an artificial simulation, even if it makes us feel good. And he was right. Studies have shown that this is exactly what most people would say. We don't want to be happy just for the sake of it. So how do we create the subjective notion of meaningfulness in our own lives? This question welcomes us to an interesting field of study. The Psychology of Meaning. Tatjana Schnell, a psychologist from Austria, is a leading figure on the discussion floor. She has made a name for herself with her hierarchic model of meaning, where she proposes her view of how subjective meaning-making mechanisms can emerge. She starts with perceptions, since we all must base what we think and do on what we see and hear. This leads to our actions, which are in turn based on our goals. The goals we have point to some sources of meaning, and she identifies the top 10 sources of meaning as the following: generativity, care, religiosity, harmony, development, social engagement, conscious experience, connection to nature, creativity, and community. The most important of these is generativity, and it is the most significant predictor for the perception of meaningfulness. Generativity is when you want to create something of lasting value, an investment that goes beyond the you and beyond the moment at hand. Raising children, caring for others, educating posterity, or investing in intellectual or creative capital are examples of this idea. Now, all of the sources of meaning can, when properly integrated, lead to the perception of a meaningful life. We often talk about this perception as having meaning in life, because the meaning of life would be a completely different thing. The meaning of life is a concept that has an objective ring to it. However, meaning in life deals with a subjective construct that serves as an anchor, providing a person with a thought that one's life is meaningful. Some researchers think that the notion of meaningfulness is characterized by 4 components. 1. Coherence. There needs to be harmony within and among the different areas of life. 2. Significance. So there ought to be some efficacy and resonance of one's own actions. 3. Orientation. We need a clear focus and a specific direction in life. 4. Belonging. That there should be a self-perception as a part of a bigger cause. Think about it. It's not so far-fetched. What do you have in mind when you think about something that might give you a meaningful life? What would it do for you? It would probably create a harmony in your life, right? It should also resonate deep within you and strike you as something valuable. It probably should give you a focus and direction for the future. And perhaps most important of all, it should give you the reassurance that you are part of something larger or of a bigger cause. Subjective meaning-making mechanisms, as opposed to the idea of a metaphysical and objective purpose, are highly influenced by socio-demographic influences. If you asked a soldier 200 years ago about the meaning of his life, the response might have been that he is destined to fight and maybe even die for his fatherland. There was a great dignity and a sense of meaningful honor attached to the thought. Today, many modern Westerners would probably chuckle at this answer. In return, they would hold that self-fulfillment or fighting for one's own dreams is the highest good and the most meaningful thing one could do. For many of us in the 21st century, striving for happiness lies at the core of how we seek significance and purpose. Now, the modern world urges us to achieve this state by the means of our own labor. This means that it has become troublesome to obtain it. Experts have coined a new term for this phenomenon: happiness stress. We need to become happy in order to have a meaningful life. And we now bear the full responsibility for it ourselves. That's not always an easy task, and I'm sure you know it all too well. Psychological studies have shown that overall, men and women do not have huge differences in their general sensation of meaningfulness. But there are conspicuous differences when it comes to their sources of meaning. Here, the traditional and well-known dichotomy between agency and communion reappears. Cross-culturally, men demonstrate that they draw much more meaning from individualism, challenges, development, power, freedom, knowledge, accomplishments, and reason. Women seem to value religiosity, spirituality, nature, social engagement, health, self-awareness, morality, communion, fun, love, harmony, wellness, care, and conscious experience. It's not that men do not care about communion, but they appear to draw less meaning out of it than women do and get a higher sense of purpose from, for example, rational discourse or self-actualization. These findings go hand in hand with the result that women tend to be more religious and reach out to broader forms of spirituality than men. There are also palpable age differences that are really fascinating to observe. Now, if you're interested in finding out more about this, you're welcome to have a look at my new book, Discovering the Meaning of Life. In the next video, we will look at how classical approaches to the problem of purpose used to look like. There is a lot we can learn from traditional philosophy and religious ideas. So, stay curious.